So I know a lot of people have a lot of stories or a lot of respect for Kurt Cobain's work. If you were around the time where he was alive and doing music, I was a child, so I do remember like his suicide, the stories of that, and all of those different things. But you probably have heard of him, and this is going to be very brief. But I started to research Vertex, and I was looking at celebrities, famous people who had the Vertex in a certain house. And as we know, the Vertex deals with fate, and so again, this is a sensitive topic. I am not at all saying that everyone who has these exact placements will have the same outcome as Kurt Cobain. But one thing we do want to look at, especially when we know that he did, commit suicide. So if this is a trigger topic for you, feel free to click off the video. But one thing that I noticed in particular is the Virgo ascendant, right? So the Virgo ascendant, so he probably had really high standards for himself. Not only that, but his Virgo ascendant opposes his Mercury in Pisces. In fact, it opposes also his Chiron. He did have some trouble in relationships. Always seeming, based on interviews and based on things that I've read, wanting the companionship and really needing to feel like he was loved and appreciated. I just read recently that one of his first girlfriends, he was like enamored with her, but because of like the circle that they were in at the time, she didn't want a traditional relationship, right? So they were young, and he wants love and what he thinks a relationship is supposed to look like. Now, we can definitely point to the fact that he has these water energies here, which already is going to draw him in some way to feminine energy. But also, like, Kurt Cobain was one of those people that I know he did speak about his sexuality before. And he's made some comments because people would say he was really open to gay rights. And also he thought there was an interview, or not interview, there was an article that said that Kurt Cobain had admitted that he thought that he was gay when he was younger. And he said he had said he was gay in spirit. In my opinion with that, especially at the time period he was alive, and again, that most of his interviews were in the 90s, so it wasn't that long ago if you were around the 90s, right? But times have changed. So nowadays he probably would have considered himself maybe pansexual. Like, based on what I've read about him, I think that and again, I'm not going to speak for someone who's no longer here. I'm just saying based on what I've read about him and how open he was with gay rights. And back then, I would say, like, sometimes, now you have more people who are allies and advocates for different people. I feel like back then it was way more people who, if you weren't in that community, maybe you accepted someone in your family, but you weren't open about saying, like, no, so I do think that that is something just that stands out. So I definitely think that this water energy in this chart, the Pisces especially, this is quintessential Pisces sensitive energy. And it also ends up in his 7th house. And Chiron represents hurt. It represents, and again, the 24th degree in the degree system I use is also linked to Pisces. The 7th house definitely represents, for him, a longing to feel understood, to feel accepted, to feel like he is noticed, to feel like he is appreciated. And that Venus and Pisces energy could also idealize romance. Not only that, but his Saturn is conjunct Venus, having hard difficulties in relationships, taking them very seriously. Venus conjunct Saturn. Relationships that are also visible or public or have a level of fame to them or notoriety due to the Saturn. Saturn is not much about fame as it is about high profile or being seen. And we all know, like, him and Courtney. But at the same time, with Pisces being here, it's the sensitivity and the sensitivity to it. Saturn and Pisces energy sometimes can definitely heighten someone's ability, or not ability, but tendency to have more depression. Because Saturn and Pisces is more is able to see the sensitivities of life through Pisces, but also see the harshness. So this can represent a person who's way more sensitive than the average person, especially the stellium of Pisces. Not to say all Pisces are like this. The other reason I thought it was interesting is because, remember, depending on what astrologer you talk to, the 4th and 12th houses, the 4th house has to do with endings because the 4th house is often associated with the end of life. So you could often see how someone's, and by end of life, I don't mean how they end, I mean like what people do in older age, the 4th house, but also the 12th house, this house of self-undoing. It is the last house of the zodiac. It is karmic. It is spiritual in nature. It could represent isolation. It could represent hospitalization. It could represent being away from what is real. And again, the 12th house has a beautiful spiritual component to it, but right now it's not what I'm talking about. So the importance here would be, to me, the Sun conjunct vertex in Pisces. One, the 5th degree, meaning he was meant to be seen and famous. In Pisces, his music touched people. Mercury in Pisces as well. He took it very seriously. 6th house. When you have 6th house energy, the work you do, it's like he almost probably cared more about the skill and level of dexterity he had in his music, more though just in the fame. But remember, when the moon's in the 10th house, that also means a person is going to have prominence. And as we can see, his legacy has lived on. People have not forgotten about him. Okay? Now, the issue here we see is, and again, this is my first time really looking at his chart, to be honest. Now, the issue sometimes can be the sensitivity here. When we see the vertex, the vertex being in Pisces, the sun being in Pisces conjunct, can definitely mean there is this level of needing to have stepped into his awareness of what his true in purpose was. And we don't really know if he felt that he had really had his purpose, lived his purpose the way that he wanted. But when the 6th house energy, despite it being Pisces, it's a sensitivity to what he's doing each day. That could mean having a lot of pressure on oneself, especially when you already have Virgo conjunct Pluto, right? And Uranus conjunct the ascendant as well. Uranus representing this need to learn how he was different and learn to accept it. Now, his energy is in retrograde. If you never learn to kind of quell and control and work through your retrograde energy, it can leave you feeling a little bit destabilized. The other thing I would note here is this fact that his Mars is conjunct his south node. There was a karmic energy with chaos. And unfortunately, it is almost like he wasn't able to kind of handle all these emotional experiences in his life, because Mars, we know Mars in Scorpio can represent this level of some type of plotting, some type of death. What I would say by this chart in particular, of course, and again, this is a sensitive topic, sensitive subject. This is no disrespect to family, friends or fans, but I would say that he maybe dwelled too much in his Scorpio past life energy, meaning this taking everything very, very much, intensely, and not really meeting the need of his Taurus North Node. The Taurus North Node, you're learning to simplify life. You're learning not to yield as much to those complex situations. And sometimes what we see in a person's chart, this is just the chart. And again, I would have to read more about him as well, but you would have to see that it could have been conditions in his life that made him not able to really actualize his North Node and live more within this South Node, because Mars can represent violence. And again, this is self-inflicted violence, as we know, because of him ending his life, but also Scorpio is an internal energy. Whereas if we saw maybe Mars in Aries, that could be more of an external energy, in terms of being, someone who is a victim of someone else. Now, we do see this need and longing for affection, also through the moon being in Cancer, but also I would say there could have been some attention-seeking behaviors that he probably exhibited in his personal life in order to get that appreciation and love that he was probably desiring. Now, again, I think especially with Jupiter being in Cancer and retrograde. Now, the thing with the Jupiter in 11th house, this is why he has such a social not a social, but an influence on society to this day. And by society, I mean, you see people wearing t-shirts. What's his name? Kid Cudi did a performance on Saturday Night Live, like wearing one of the dresses. Wasn't the actual dress, but he wore a dress performing, and he said this is in honor of Kurt Cobain. So he has a lot of fans still around, right? And I think with that, Jupiter being 11th house, it's almost like he felt the fan energy, but he never really, I think it's almost like this chart showing me that a lot of things that happened in his life, nothing was ever, to him, good enough. Or he didn't maybe feel good enough. He has a sun in Pisces in the 6th house, and he's a Virgo ascendant. There is this need to, I'm trying to make things better. I'm trying to make my life better. I'm trying. That's kind of what I'm sensing and getting from this chart. Remember, when I do chart readings in particular, I can interpret literally, but I also can tell you what I'm sensing. There's the energy around it as well. Pluto being in Virgo, it does not mean everyone who has this placement will end their lives. However, being so close to the ascendant does represent, again, that pressure, in my opinion. The 19th degree, super, super significant in terms of partnership. Not saying, I wouldn't blame anyone in particular for it, but I do feel that he, at the time of his death, he felt dissatisfied with his relationships, or he felt dissatisfied with feeling like he was understood. Because at the end of the day, Pisces energy, at the end of the day, they just want to feel that they're accepted, because Pisces sees things very differently than how we see them. And he probably felt his whole life that nobody could see what he could see. And when you feel that pressure and you're not able to direct that into a belief system, or feel that you are supported, that can be very difficult for some people. And so Pluto, we know, can be fatalistic. Pluto can be consumption, control, obsession. Pluto in Virgo, this compulsion, this need to perfect things or make things better can definitely lead somebody to, especially with this in retrograde, not truly understand. And again, the way I do retrogrades is, one, I interpret the actual retrogrades when I'm doing a chart reading. It's not a chart reading like, the way I would do it for a client, but this is associated with past life energy. I treat retrogrades like past life energy, in addition to explaining what they might mean in this lifetime. So if he wasn't actually able to shake this Mars and Scorpio, everything in life feels intense. I have to react and respond to everything in order to stabilize myself. Maybe even having fears of not being stable down the line financially as well, because Mars is in Scorpio in the second house, which can be great for accumulating resources. But at the end of the day, it's conjunct the South Node past. So if there's any past issues attached to that South Node, these fears can manifest in this lifetime. And Pluto can also show us what we fear. Right? And he also in the 8th house, which we know can also be symbolism of death and those types of energies, is he has, look at this, the 13th degree. In the degree system I use, that's Aries. And this is Aries in the 8th house. And then we look, okay, well, where's Mars? Mars is in the 2nd house in Scorpio conjunct the South Node. Living out a karmic experience, potentially getting Pisces energy in this lifetime in order to understand life in a less intense way and to really go with the flow more and to feel that you have more choice. Pisces is a more choice. Pisces can struggle with choices, but Pisces is mutable water. It is not locked in like a Scorpio. However, when we look at someone's chart and we look at their life and their family or how they were raised or just different circumstances that have happened, sometimes you aren't going to see them be able to kind of, utilize the best aspects of their chart, right? And so I also think the creativity, the Neptune being in the 3rd house. I also see here again, like I said, Pluto conjunct Uranus. This is the 12th house. That definitely can represent like a strange death, a strange circumstance happening that required sometimes us to really analyze. Like think about Virgo energy. Virgos sometimes do leave people in mystery. Not like Scorpio. Scorpio sometimes knows it's doing it. Virgo just has this level of reservation of, I don't need to tell X, Y, and Z. He was very open and fluid in how he spoke, that Mercury and Piscean energy. The 18th degree, analysis. So that 18th degree, his Mercury really actually benefited his 6th house in order for him to really, be outspoken, to speak how he just felt. And that's that Mercury and Pisces energy of like, I'm speaking in order to connect to people. This need to connect and to always say something. His chart shows me he was always speaking and saying things in hopes that somebody would understand him. And especially throughout his career and even after his life, you saw people who understood him. And sometimes, unfortunately, people do pass away and feel like nobody understands me or nobody gets me or this person gets me, but not everybody. And then afterwards, right, he's made such an impact on people who still, are fans. And so what I would definitely say with this chart is we do see that this is an example of a very sensitive person. Life was seen, they experienced it, felt it very much so. Like this man is a mutable sun, mutable rising, and a cardinal moon, right? And so through that, we saw this need through the Virgo rising to be like put on his best self. So sometimes what he was showing the world may not have been how he was really feeling inside, but we do see that there's levels of attachment energy and issues from the 7th house. Though there's not bad at all, we do know that he struggled in his relationships. And it's not just because of the Pisces, but Saturn is in there. Saturn is also conjunct Chiron in Pisces in the 7th house. And so we do see through his chart as this example of the highly sensitive soul and what the highly sensitive soul really needed. Right. And again, I don't speak on why someone did with, harm themselves. I don't speak on that. This is not a judgment factor. This is me simply looking at the astrology of it and trying to piece some things together, because we do know what happened to him. This does not mean if you have these placements, this is what you need to do, or this is how your fate is going to end up. We can't look at astrology. You shouldn't look at someone else's chart as you. That is a very big mistake. And you have to learn to understand you and your life. And even if you have similar placements as him, you don't have the same upbringing, you don't have the same experience, you don't have the same career, right? Like there's different layers to all of this. So that was it for this. Is a very impromptu video, but I only just came across his vertex, and I wanted to make some connections to this.